everybody. Welcome to the media show. I'm Nick Pellegrin. I'll be your host today, and we have quite a few guests who will be coming on later on the program. But first of all, we're going to bring in one of our commentators from Los Angeles, yeah, Rick Rosner. Welcome to
Hello.
the media show. Looks like we had a pretty exciting roundabout the other day with the Honorable David M. Walker, and also we're going to bring in somebody we haven't seen in a long time. I don't know where he's been. He's a guy that you'll see quite often on the Pod TV network, coming in from the Raleigh Durham area, the Honorable Chris Greco. Chris, I watch your shows, but haven't seen you in a while. Basically,
Yeah, it's been a very busy year. Wife wife has Parkinson's. We're just trying to make it work. So,
you
anyways,
don't make Parkinson's work too well. I have essential tremor, and it's a pain in the rear.
I'll tell you, I'd be in a corner in a fetal position, wondering why God punished me. But she's like, I'm going to kick this thing's butt. So,
oh really? Do they have new medication on Parkinson's right now?
No, but they have new ways of delivering it. The delivery is new. But the same old stuff, carbidopa, levodopa, but they're trying different ways of delivering it, like the diabetics. They have the injection stuff automatically. It's put in like a pouch. They're trying that type things. So that may be our next step. We're trying to figure it out. So it's and with 2 grandkids now, she's and she exercises every day and all that. But it's It's really interesting, but as soon as I saw the media, I thought I got to get in on this. This is what I mean. So it's a good topic. So it'll be good to be able to make that work.
Yeah, well, the thing when you have essential tremor, what happens is your hand shakes. I can't hold a spoon because it shakes. It's just really weird. And they gave me some. I'm just gonna let you know what they did with me. They gave me some of this medication, right, and it knocks me out, literally, just whoa. Like that. So my choice is to be completely a zombie with headaches and, or deal with the tremors. So I just chose the tremors. It's like,
So we tried. Yeah. So we've tried a couple of things, and once you know it, it's Kathy's strong side too. That's got the tremor. We tried a spoon that is specially designed for people with tremors, and it actually works really well. It's an amazing. You can get it on Amazon. It's really wild. And another thing is actually use wrist weights, which she wears, and that evidently also helps to curb the tremors down.
Yeah.
Main thing with her is she's just tired. She's really tired. The medication.
The medication puts me out. I can't do the meds. But anyway, that's something that is. For people that have had this issue, kind of understand the issue. If you don't have it, you just don't understand it. It's just
right
the way it is. It's really bizarre. But it's just something. Yeah, Mark. Yeah,
I had a question about the media, and I noticed the media show and everything. Because I was wondering definitely your thoughts as the legal man, and also Jacoby. And I'm glad that Chris is here. Glad to see you, Chris. We've been talking on the phone, but I haven't seen your lovely face in a while. But apparently, Florida and Texas are wanting to moderate what folks can do in social media, and it is now in the Supreme Court. So I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to decide, but definitely they said that Florida and Texas passed laws back in 2021 ordering social media platforms to limit their content moderation, removing or devaluing certain posts at their discretion, and requiring them to issue notice and an explanation anytime a user's content is removed or an account is suspended. So they wanted explanations for why things were happening if you were, saying something that they didn't agree with and everything. And now they are going to, they enacted some rules, and definitely internet companies have insisted they have the right to set their own standards like any other publisher and cannot be forced to host messages on their platforms that they don't support, such as hate speech, misinformation, and other malicious content. And federal appeals courts divided on the question. One striking down the Florida law is a violation of the First Amendment, and another upholding Texas law as permissible government intervention. So it looks like it's in front of the high courts now, and I guess we'll see what the high courts have to say about this. But what is your folks about this, and what is this going to do for social media in general, because a lot of people, that's where they find their news, whether it's Clubhouse or Facebook or a number of other places, even Instagram. So what's our thoughts around this notion of getting this stuff regulated?
People who want to regulate it are often not honest brokers. You look at, like, Elon Musk says Twitter X is now like free, unless you say something mean about Elon Musk, then you get in trouble. And Florida and Texas are not exactly honest brokers of information.
Yep. What's your take, Jatovi? You're in the social media space. You're oftentimes on social media, just like I am, and everything. But what's your take? And is the Supreme Court going to put in some regulations? Because as we know here on this network, and Nick can speak to this, we have definitely been banned for things that were said, whether it's around COVID or a number of other things. I think Nick said he's been placed in jail a number of times, and I got hacked, which is why I don't have a LinkedIn account anymore, and I'm working on improving that, but that can be a nightmare trying to get that back up and all along those lines. But I just wondering your take on this notion of kind of regulations around social media and all in that space.
No, what Rick said is right. I mean, Florida is also the same place that threw in a conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer in, and the first thing he did was kick everybody out who spoke against his COVID ideas and craziness. So yeah, that whole regulation that they're probably coming up with is the same thing they're going to do is the same thing with banned books. Remember, Florida's the same place that's been banning books just because. So yeah, I don't agree with the idea that they're putting forth.
Florida's having a measles outbreak now because DeSantis put in a lunatic quack doctor as Surgeon General.
Speaking of lunatics and all along those lines and everything, I was downtown yesterday. There's a very popular festival. Jatovi will know about this, not necessarily Nick, because he just moved to our area, but Nevermore is a film festival around horror and fantasy. So I was down there, and when I was down there, I got approached by the Audubon Society. They wanted me to make a donation to that fine organization and all along those lines, but they were bringing out something else that comes up in the media, whether we agree with it or not. But I'd love to hear folks' thoughts around this, which is this notion of climate change and whether we're reporting enough on this in the media. So I'm really directing this toward Chris, because I know he did one of his shows on this and all along this lines, because they were pointing out the fact that there was a tornado in Milwaukee. I think this was like last week and everything, and they don't really get a lot of tornadoes in Milwaukee, but apparently they had one. And I mentioned that I had an interview with somebody in Wyoming, and they hadn't had snow in January, which is the opposite end of the extremes and everything. And he was also, the gentleman that was talking to me was lamenting the fact that he had not seen any snow yet here in North Carolina. Not that we get a lot of snow, but he did remember the time that we did get snow, and doing the whole snow angels and doing the whole snow cone. And even though he was probably in his I would guess the late 20s or early 30s, he was lamenting the fact that he had not done that this year and everything, because we haven't had any snow in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, it's about 65 degrees or expected to be that today, so we're having spring-like weather and everything. So Chris, what's your take on climate change as a media issue and everything?
Well, so let's get the definitions correct, right? So first of all, AOC, I think it was Miss Scientist, which I can clarify why she's not a scientist. But anyways, weather and climate are related. It's kind of funny that people sit there and say, no, weather and climate, you have to have weather to have climate. Weather changes, climate changes over a period of 35 years. As a matter of fact, they've said it changes every 35 years, basically a generation. So, but to go on the opposite side of that, they were right. I took a look at the tornado statistics from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Weather Service, and yes, the last time that Wisconsin had a tornado was in the 1950s. Now, again, data is not just data. Data is collected different ways. So what happens is, and I've noticed this with most government databases now, is that they are literally differentiating between 1990 and before and 1990 after. If data was collected in 1990 or after, then it is standard. If it's 1990 or 1989 or before, it's not standard. So those things that happened in 1950, you have to remember, in 1950, how many satellites did we have rotating the Earth other than the moon? Zero satellites. The only thing that we got are tornadoes from 1950 until 1958 or 1959, when ECHO was launched, was basically observation. If people observed a tornado, they reported it to the National Weather Service, and then it was put as part of the record. So all these things occur, and those things have to be taken into consideration when you're talking about climate change or otherwise. And to sit back and say that the climate is the worst climate ever is a bunch of horse poop. It's always been a bunch of horse poop. Rick, you know this. Chitovi, you know this. When you're talking about it's the worst weather ever, no way can you make that statement, because nobody was around. Nobody was in the United States taking weather forecasts before what? 300 years? 300 years ago? 400 years ago? 500 years ago? I mean, there's no record of United States climates or weather, so you cannot make that judgment. You can sit back and you can say, well, I can count the rings in a tree, or I can do what. Yeah, but that is localized aspects. It's not something you can say generally.
You can make statistical judgments, and two things you can say is, that given everything, that the odds that we're not having climate change are pretty low.
We're having climate change. I agree. I've always agreed with climate change.
Two is that you should kind of, in order to address it, you should kind of act like it's the things will get pretty bad is a real possibility.
So my question is,
yes, I agree with that.
Can we utilize statistics data and everything else that they use in the scientific method to figure out exactly what the climate was based upon the area?
It's a guess.
Yes,
Toby. Yes.
No, Chris, what I'm saying is, so if you can utilize that, then can't you make a judgment based off of that?
Yes, but the judgment has to.
Yes. If the answer is yes, because you answered yes both times, then how can you not say that you can state, based on statistical data and the scientific method that we utilize, we can make a guess. We can actually pinpoint and say that it is worse now than it was then.
Well, we can say it's worse now than it was up to the point where we have statistical data. So, and that statistical data has to be collected in a way. Let me give you an example, Jacoby. Let me give you an example, and this will hit home. So there was statistical data that certain formularies having to do with kidney disease were done, right? And you know, in that formulary, you know what they did, Jacoby? They took all the blacks and they said, we're going to, instead of multiplying, we're going to multiply by 1.016 on a certain level of creatinine, which has to do with the kidney area. And guess what? The higher creatinine levels you have, the less you need a kidney transplant. And you know what they found? They found that blacks were dying because they were not waiting, because they had to wait for kidney disease. So what they've done now is they've said, we're completely doing away with that formula. So let's talk about the scientific method just for a second. How many blacks were killed as a result, literally, I wouldn't say murdered, but close, because of formulary.
Chris, your argument right now has nothing to do with climate change.
Sure it does. It's formulary. It's statistical data and formulary.
What I asked was basically, we can take the statistical data and look at, for example, we can guesstimate based on statistics, observations and data and so on and so forth, to figure out how the climate when the dinosaurs were here. Can we not?
No, we cannot. No, I'm just going to say no. There's no way you can do
There's
that.
no
None.
way that
Zero.
we can take
No.
statistical
No.
data
You
and
can't
look
even.
at the
You
trajectories
can't even.
and the trends.
You
and figure out
cannot
what the
even
climate
figure
was.
out what the dinosaurs were. Look, they can sit there and they can guess all they want, Jacoby.
Hey,
No, you
Chris,
can't. You
come
can't say.
on.
Okay, you're going to tell me that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was purely a meat eater. That's what you're going to say. You have no idea. Neither do the scientists. They're sitting back going, "Go ahead." I'm sorry, but I mean,
I want to go down the kidney hole, the kidney rabbit hole for a second. So what happened was, black people can be more muscular than white people. And the more muscular you are, the more creatinine you have in your urine.
There's your statistical data, Jacoby.
So what happened is they did a study. The black people had higher levels of creatinine, probably because they were more muscular. This was one study based on a limited sample of people from 50 years ago. Then everybody in America, including fat people, black people, got fat. So that one study, which was kind of crappy in the first place, got obliterated by everybody in America getting chubby. So yeah, you've got these two sets of numbers, statistics that are unfair now to most Americans because they were based on this one study of muscular black people 50 years ago.
Yeah, they were based on one study, but we're talking about in terms of the climate scientists and everything else that we're discussing here. There are multiple studies. And even when you go to the multiple studies about the climate of dinosaur times and so on and so forth, there are multiple studies. So you're saying that everybody who does that study is wrong?
I'm saying that it's based on data that is totally contrafactual. You have no idea what happened, Jacoby. You have no idea. The scientists, let me give you a book to read. Jacoby, you want to read a book, and if you do read this book, I guarantee you that you will change if you read it open-mindedly.
We'll make this easy.
The name of the book. The name of the book is what?
Before you even get to the book. So then, are you saying that meteorologists and so on and so forth that are looking at trends and figuring out climate around the time today are also wrong?
Oh, yes.
They're utilizing the same science.
Let me tell you, anybody that makes a prediction, anybody that says, look, if we get to 1.5 degrees centigrade, it's apocalyptic. Guess where we are? Above the 1.5 degrees centigrade. We're there.
Hey, along those same lines, just really quickly, and along the same, a couple of things that y'all said do cross my mind and everything. But one thing is that there is a famous book that has been out there forever, and some people, when I had considered being a weatherman in grade school way back in the Ice Ages, had been a fan of this particular book, will argue that it is as accurate, if not more accurate, than our current meteorologists with all of their scientific data and everything else. And there are a number of people that will also point to folklore and folklorists and everything. So there are some people that will say that whether you're in Louisiana or other parts of the world, that there are certain folklores that will dictate what the weather will be like. And the book that I was referring to was Old Ben's Almanac. So I just wanted everybody's thoughts about Ben's Almanac and whether that is actually maybe in some cases more factual than the meteorologist. And we know that sometimes the meteorologist
it's a distraction. It's a distraction. But the deal is we can look at what is likely to happen, and you can argue about how likely, but we're going to lose, like New Orleans is in trouble because New Orleans is below sea level. We're going to lose Miami. We're going to lose lower Manhattan. We're losing the island of Venice. And one thing is you can't change human behavior as much as you can exploit economic opportunity. Climate change is an opportunity for people who figure out how to address it to make $1 trillion. And we'll see that. Like in the Netherlands, they have this giant sea gate, 1/4 mile long. But when the ocean is rising at certain times, when a storm front's coming in, they close the gate and to protect the whole country from being flooded. And you can argue about how big the effects are going to be, whether it's going to be 200 million people displaced by climate change, 400 million, 10% of the Earth's population, 800 million. But it's coming, and we can argue about how fast it's going to come, but it's coming, and we're going to be living in the world of that. And this show is on the media, so we can talk about how much bandwidth we have in our brains to pay attention to it when there's all this other stuff going on.
Well, I like warmer climates anyway, so I don't give a rat's for, about the fact that, if it gets warmer here, I'm a good. I grew up in Florida. Gets warmer, fine. By the way, if the beaches all flood, I could care less. There are a bunch
my town is going to be I think that LA will take a huge hit economically over the next 20 years because it'll get more uncomfortable to live here because the entertainment industry, which is full of spoiled babies like myself, will say, the hell with this. I don't like living in LA anymore. They will move north to Silicon Valley, to Vancouver, and LA will lose the way New York used to be the center of the entertainment industry. LA was nicer, so New York lost that industry.
Also, Rick, you have a lot of rich lowlives who bought beachfront property, and they're all going to be submerged. And I think that's great, because they're all complaining because they can't afford the insurance, but they shouldn't. What we should do is let these rich people drown like Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach and all the people in Palm Beach.
Yeah, you're talking about Florida. Like LA at least is hilly. So when I'm in LA, I'm at 800 feet above sea level. So I'll be the whole San Fernando Valley will be fine. Some parts of Venice, Santa Monica will be screwed, but all of Florida is screwed because Florida doesn't have hills. Mountains.
To me, that's fine. I mean, if you imagine, if you go to the beaches in Florida, all wealthy people bought because they're entitled to a beautiful view along the ocean. They bought all these mansions along the beaches in Florida. If they all flooded out and it cost these rich people billions of dollars, frankly, I could care less. I live in Durham. There's no water around me. If it gets warmer, it's fine for me, and I don't really care about them. So I think it's kind of a worthless conversation because it really will probably help.
Dick, speaking of
that,
it's
it's how much room do you give it in your head? Like we're talking about the media. Like a lot of liberals are pissed that so much attention is being paid to how old Biden is, and that they want that to occupy less of people's brain space because it's bad for Biden.
That's because
how much are we going to freak out about climate change? It's kind of a media decision.
Well, the tough part with climate change, I think the tough part with the discussion around climate change is because it's not in your face. So you can get scared of a tornado because you see it. You can get scared of a hurricane because you can see it. With climate change, it just inches and gets warmer. It gets warmer. It gets warmer.
That's my book.
So,
there you go. There you go. Toby, here's my book. I'll send you a copy. I'll send you a free copy. There it is, right there. Data analyst walks into a bar graph. It's got from the 1800s all the way through all these data things that basically were just ridiculous studies, highly, highly humorous stuff that said the end of the world was because the horses were going to be leaving poop and we're going to have 9 feet of horse poop. So what happened? The car was invented. So, I mean, the car, it took that away. So all of a sudden it was like, and then you have the people saying that, apocalypse in 1972, end of the world. Oh, no, not 1972, 2022. Oh, not 1922, not 2022, 2052. It goes on and on and on. Coffee will kill you. Coffee will cure you. Wine will kill you. Wine will kill you. It goes on and on and on and on. It's the idea that I'm not saying, and Jacoby, don't get me wrong. I have the utmost respect for people that do studies, for people that do data stuff, when they take into consideration all the things that have to go along with that. And that's a tough ask to be able to do that. But the climate change aspects is I can find you studies right now that says climate change is a bunch of bull. And I can find you climate studies that say climate change is real. And it goes back and forth and back and forth.
So Chris, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding Chris's viewpoint and everything.
Hold on. I was just going to say, Chris, yes, you can find studies that say unicorns are real. So if you're talking about, hey, we're gonna really believe in unicorns, I'm gonna find a real study on this. No, we know climate change is a fact. And
yes, climate change is a fact.
It's a fact, and we cannot look at say, well, we're gonna give equivalence to somebody just saying, well, climate change isn't real. We can't do that. We know
No.
the data is there. And
Well,
we
change
know
is
that-
always real. Change is real.
No, but we're
Chitovi,
not
change
saying
is
that
real.
no,
All
but
change
the
is real.
change
Climate
thing-
change is real. Weather change is real. All
but the
change is
thing
real.
But the thing is, we have the data to back that up, and we have the understanding to back that up. The problem is we jump into the conspiracies and give credence to the idea that, oh, well, it's not really that bad, when it really is, when we have the data to prove that.
And you know, Chitovi, just to springboard off
Well,
that,
we
I
don't
have a
know.
phrase that says something like this: if people do not believe that their house is flooding until their ankles get wet, and that is an absolute truism. You know, people in Congress, people of what otherwise, all of a sudden, when it becomes real to them, it's real. You know, and that's the issue, and that's I think that's what you're bringing up.
Yeah,
we have a modern example of bad understanding of statistics killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. And that's around the COVID vaccine and COVID itself. And a ton of people didn't get vaxxed and thought COVID was just a bad cold because they were told BS by people who can't do math. And they took that advice and they got killed by COVID.
I agree.
Well, underlying conditions. Yeah, I agree.
But Rick, in this Darwinian theory working out, in other words, stupid people, they don't take the vaccine, they die, they don't reproduce, life is good again. Okay.
So, I mean, in our modern world, we're all stupid people.
You buy in Durham, you don't buy in Wilmington, so your property isn't flooded. Dumb people buy on the beach, and their properties get flooded. They get hit by hurricanes, and who gives a rat's rear? So I'm not concerned about climate change because it doesn't affect me. So I don't really care, you know? So I think the conversation is worthless, even though I agree it is anthropomorphic. I did read the IPCC studies, 97% to 3%, the scientists say. It's created by people. We're going to have warmer climates. But guess what? This person here, I don't care. I don't own beachfront property. I'm not going to own beachfront property. And I like warmer climates. So for me, it's all
this is a pet peeve of mine. When people talk about the world we're leaving to our grandchildren, those grandchildren are going to be such weirdos. Do we really like they're going to be in thruples and just also they're going to be half robots? It's like, all right, you guys just, you know.
And my father said to me something that I took with me, and that is that children are not problems. Children are solutions. They make solutions. The solutions we've come up with as kids and, our grandkids and everything else, they're going to fix this stuff. They are. I mean, I truly believe that there are kids, your grandkids, Chitovi, your kids, your grandkids, all those people that are out there will fix this stuff. It's going to take some effort on their part to do it. But they're going to fix it. We have fixed things, in our generation. They're going to fix things in their generation, and things will turn out well. I really, truly believe that. I have to believe that. I mean, it's going to.
The fixes are going to be super weird. Like we're already in the middle of one fix, which is we're so addicted to internet life and social media that people are having less sex, and in 25% of the countries of the world, the population is dropping. That's going to continue. People will have less sex.
Less people, less pollution. We're good.
People, right? Yeah, and people will spend 60 hours a day.
It's a logic thing, right?
In virtual reality, they'll consume fewer resources.
That's right.
And but that's a weird solution that everybody's just going to be in their terrible little apartment with goggles on.
Climate change was invented by Al Gore to make Al Gore rich. That's it. He's now worth $300 million
or more. Hey, the guy got a Nobel Prize, cut me a break, or whatever you got. No, Academy Award. Sorry, same thing. Award. Same thing. So that's
same thing. So is your book available on Amazon, Chris?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
that's what I had on.
We actually have a Pod TV bookstore now, which is hooked in with Amazon. So Mark, we got to make sure his book is available on our Pod TV bookstore. I noticed you used the word risible. Do you know
Yes.
that half of our audience probably don't know what that word means?
Nope. But I had to have something that was gonna rhyme with
You have alliteration.
research, and I didn't want to use ridiculous. So I thought I'm
Right.
going to put risible in there, and I'm going to see how many people actually look it up.
Risible is a good word, and that's the reason you have the internet, because you ask, what does risible mean? And the internet knows.
That's right, exactly.
So I looked at that, I go, well, it has alliteration, but let me tell you, that's an SAT word. It's not a common used word, Professor Greco.
Yes,
Just to
yes.
let you
That's what I figured. I figured sooner or later somebody's going to sit there and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
dumbass, you put the risible in there, or
It's like
risible.
Rick Ross was-
What'd you do that for? You
Rick
just
Ross was
lost."
giving us math questions throughout the throughout our
Jatovy knew what it meant. Just
Jatovy
nod your head.
knew.
Jatovy knew. See, he knew what it meant. Dadgummit. You know.
I have a word for the future. It's Disneyfication, where we're going to totally mess up the planet, and then we're going to use technology to make the way Disneyland is kind of a curated, like really nice version of the world. Once after we're done effing up the planet, we're going to use like swarms of billions of little robots to terraform Earth to make it look all nicey nice, even though it's not natural. It'll be, it'll be robot powered. I think you could save the islands of Venice by like having digger robots that get in under the islands and jack them up like 6 inches, like a millimeter a month for a few decades.
Yeah, there's probably some technological solution to Venice.
You know what the solution is in Venice right now? They have folding tables lined up along all the major streets, and when Venice floods, city workers go in and they unfold the tables, and they're 3 feet off the ground, and you walk down the street in the middle of a flood along the tops of folding tables.
Rick, I want to tell you what the solution to the Ukraine-Russian war is. I'm going to tell you exactly what the solution is. And I said it on one of my shows, and I never got any feedback on it, which means either people aren't watching my show or they just don't really give a crap. But offer Russia NATO membership and offer Belarus NATO membership. I'm telling you right now, think about that just for a second. If you were to offer Russia NATO membership, right? Well, of course, Putin would say, no, we're not going to do that. And then it would be kind of like, well, wait a minute. You don't want people to join NATO. We're offering you membership. Now, it's going to be vetted and all that stuff. But, why don't you come on and you be a member of NATO, or offer Belarus being a member of NATO? And then all of a sudden, Russia sits there and says, whoa, Belarus is going to be a member of NATO? Well, we got to invade it. So all of a sudden you have this situation where it just proves out that Putin is just he's wacko. He's just nuts. Now people know he's nuts, but the people inside Russia are there's little bits and pieces that are sitting there saying, oh, but now I think kind of like, hey,
the people in Russia don't know. They get curated media that shields them from, they kind of semi know that thing that Putin's approval is what, over 80%?
Or else.
I remember at the beginning of the war, there was a lot of optimistic thinking that said that Putin is very sick and this is his last stab at glory before he dies. Well, we're 2 years in and Putin seems very healthy at this point. I don't know. So just the power of wishful thinking and
yeah, it's a tough road to hoe. But the thing is though, Jatovy, getting back to your area, I do not in any way, shape, or form disapprove or disagree with what you're hearing from data and data studies and everything else. It is what it is. And literally, I don't mean to say that fallaciously or with some type of facetiously. I'm just saying that yes. People believe, and the more that they get data that concretes that belief, then they're going to believe more. And that's where it's like, okay,
it's basically an echo chamber. That's all it is. People look for confirmation rather than actual data and understanding, and that's the problem.
You can extrapolate statistically. There's we know
within reason, Rick. Within reason, yes.
Yeah, but
Not straight line
cosmology,
regression.
the
No.
science of the size and age of the universe is all extrapolation, because we say the universe is 14 billion years old. We had to make a bunch of assumptions, a lot of them statistical, and we know that the universe is, I don't know what, like 65 billion light years in rate, something in diameter, and all that. We can't send anything, we can't measure it directly. So it's all a matter of, well, we know that this star is this bright, this kind of star. And so if you should look up measuring the size of the universe. It's all those.
So what's wild, and see, this is I do the Star Talk Radio, Neil deGrasse Tyson, all that other crazy. So it's wild, but it's all based on data that we receive, because science is a living thing to think about. So data is always coming in. For example, we never knew about dark energy, dark matter before a particular time. We just created the CERN the CERN collider, but what was it, about 10 years ago? And now we're talking about creating a larger version of that CERN device, and people are still afraid of creating a black hole around it because of what it may do. But we also, thinking about the expansion of the universe, and this is what's really mind-blowing. Like, for example, if you talk about black holes, one of the things that they talk about black holes, if you get to that event horizon, which you can never do because you spaghettify yourself, but the speed that it goes around at that time, if you were able to look at that event horizon, you're actually going to be seeing the back of your head at the same time that you look, just because of the speed of light that is going around. And then I'll talk about the dark energy. If you think about what separates us, what's pushing us apart, and that's when they talk about that dark energy and that dark matter and the dark mass that's always there, and that outweighs, and that it's mind-blowing to think about it. And
I think Big Bang Theory is a mess, because a lot of the assumptions we've made now are maybe questionable. Like, the way it works in science is you've got a theory, and over time the theory kind of like accumulates like glitches, like the people find new things, like Newton's gravity worked fine for 300 years until they found all these counter examples. Then you had to have Einstein's general relativity. And
the effects of gravity on time within itself. So how, for example, if you think about gravity and how time is spinning, when you stand up, time is actually going faster at a particular part of your body than it is on the other part of your body, based on the distance that you're away from the gravitational field that's pulling you to the earth.
Yeah, and it's a factor of like 1/4. Like, it's no big deal. But if you're close to a black hole, it's a huge deal. And there's a thing called spaghettification. If you fall into a black hole, the gravity is so much stronger at your feet than at your head that what kills you is being stretched.
And so let's talk about this from a perspective that, Jatovia, I know you're going to agree with. Is that statistics and data proves that there are miracles, and it's interesting to note, probability, statistics proves that there are miracles, that there is a God, that there is the Son of God, and that there is. And the way that they did that, the way that he did it, actually was Thomas Bayes. So Thomas Bayes, a theologian, brought up aspects about saying, look, what is the probability of this and this and this and this and this and this and this happening, right? And all of a sudden it's like, it's so minuscule that the only way it could have happened was a miracle. His whole idea was to prove that miracles exist. And he did that through data gathering, and he did that through probability. And so the whole idea behind it is you can prove certain things, or at least get to that point where, hey, this is what's happening.
I have to just push back on that, because then if you're saying that if a God exists, what God are we talking about? Because there are over 2,000 plus religions. Each religion has 2 or 3 deities associated with it. So therefore, what God are we talking about?
Well, then
And
we can
on
just
top of that,
then let's get even more
Not the
detailed.
miracle.
Let's say miracles. Miracles exist.
But
Doesn't matter
what
which God.
is a
So
miracle?
miracles exist because the probability of this and this and this and this and this happening is so small
This
that it's got to be a
sounds-
miracle.
This sounds like the argument against evolution, that
Yeah.
it's so unlikely that we would evolve, that these things would evolve, that evolution can't be true. But when you look at the individual processes that contribute to evolution, you can make the case that that we evolved and originated naturally, and not via divine intervention.
Hold on a second. Along
What
those same lines,
defines a
what is
miracle
the
in that?
definition of a miracle? Because some people would say that, even though I don't have any children, that my brother's 2 kids are a miracle, and a lot of people say that that is the miracle of
Because
life.
of probability.
That means that
Right.
there are several billion miracles that happen every time, because there are like 8 billion people in the world, so that means that there have been 8 billion
You can-
miracles
you can
according to that
statis-
notion of what is a miracle.
There was a famous book 60 years ago called How to Lie with Statistics.
Daryl Huff. Yes.
But
Daryl Huff, and it was 60 years ago, 70 actually.
and which is about the abuse of statistics, and often you lie to yourself with statistics. And what came out about that book, a great book, by the way, except
Yes,
that he
it is.
was paid by the cigarette companies to
Yes, he
write
was.
the book to get them off the hook. Because when people had statistics and say, yes, cigarettes
So-
are killing you, they
Right.
wanted to be able to hold up.
So
So
that
be
proof.
careful about that, because then you get into climate change, you get into all these areas where it's kind of like statistics rolls you down that, you know.
Hold on a second. Chris, along those same lines.
No miracles, no
I'd love to
climate
hear your
change.
thoughts
No.
around-
And
there's
miracles
a
and
very
climate change are
famous,
completely different.
document that's out now, and it actually
Wow,
involves
they're both proven.
even the gentleman
No,
from
actually, miracles are not.
So
I just said they
Miracles
were.
are a generic. Miracle is a generic term. It is not a specific
Definition.
thing.
Good. I'm glad, Jatovi. Good. You mentioned definition. So define climate change. Define climate change for me. I want to know what climate change is. I want to know the official definition
Hold on,
of climate change. Can't find one.
No, Chris, hold on. Just to push back on that, because that
Sure.
is that's a ridiculous argument. We know where climate change goes into. We know we're talking about weather, and
We know where miracles goes into.
No, hold on. No, we don't, because a
Sure we
miracle.
do.
No, we don't, Chris. If you're talking about a miracle, could be a baby born. You're talking about
That's
a
right.
miracle could be a comet. You're talking
Wow.
about, so how is a baby and a comet the same thing? You cannot
Probability
you can-
aspects. Same with climate
No,
change.
but Chris, you're saying that
We're not.
anything that you see as rare is considered a miracle.
Okay. Okay.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I have a definition for you. This is according to the National Geographic Society. Hold on a second.
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead,
a
Mark.
definition for you, Rick. Climate change, according to the National Geographic Society, is a long-term alteration of
Long-term.
temperature and typical weather patterns in a place. Climate change can refer to a particular location or the planet as a whole. Climate change may cause weather patterns to be less predictable. So that is a definition.
And then yet you're predicting them. I mean, it's so funny. This is like a duality of terms, like jumbo shrimp. It's so it's unpredictable, but yet it's predictable. But let's predict climate change because it's unpredictable.
So Chris, so what are you
Chris,
trying to
define a miracle.
accomplish? What are you trying to teach us here? Because
Yeah.
you believe in climate change.
Yes.
Yet
I believe in change. Every climate changes every 35 years. You know, the thing was, they said long term, but they didn't even define that. I found a definition that actually said 35 years. Every 35 years, climate changes. Now, that's based on ups and downs of climate, weather, whatever you want, the temperature, the humidity, all the other things that go along with that. It comes up with 35 years. So wait 35 years, it'll change again.
Do you believe that human activities have contributed to long-term changes in the climate?
Yes. Yes.
So
More people,
basically,
even breathing out carbon dioxide. I mean, things. Yes.
So you understand climate change as a defined thing. Can you define what a miracle is?
Sure. You can look it up. It's defined. You can look it up in Webster's.
Well, Chris, we're here right now. Mark just defined what climate change was. We all know what climate change is. Define miracle. Is it a specific thing?
A surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by nature or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency.
Okay,
There you
so
go.
it's
A
not
highly
specific thing.
improbable or extraordinary event, development, or
It's
accomplishment that
not a
brings very welcome
specific thing.
circumstances.
So anything can be a miracle.
Anything,
Climate change can be a miracle.
climate change, you know, if
So again,
it's
Chris,
unexpected, if it says not explicable by natural or scientific
generic
laws.
term. What's an event? It's a generic term.
Okay, so
What's a long term? Generic term. Long term meaning what? Long term meanings what? That's what climate change is. Long
You
term.
know what climate change is. You don't know what a miracle is.
So we're okay. So what
I know everything changes. Climate changes.
hold
Weather
on.
changes.
You know
we're
what climate
getting
change is. You don't know what a miracle is.
What we're
A miracle's
getting at
defined. I got you. I just read your definition.
is on the media, and what we're
So,
getting
climate
at
change.
is
Miracle.
a certain amount of
miracle.
hold on. We're getting at a certain amount of both sidesism. Like I get annoyed when somebody's obviously guilty of something and they keep saying alleged long past the point of, yeah, he did it. You can quit saying alleged. And there's this both sidesism around, like people are in the media are reluctant to talk too much about climate change. Like some crazy crap happened. We had a tornado where there's never been, as far as we know. And yeah, you can argue how far back that goes. People are reluctant to say, well, you know, like an anchor might say to the co-anchor, well, that seems crazy. Is it climate change? But like everybody's very reluctant to name climate change. But we know it's happening. And that reluctance is, you know, not helpful. You know, we can say, well, you know, that no individual weather event can be definitely attributed to climate change. But overall, you can say that.
But along those same lines, Rick, because I think I see where you're going. Along those same lines, I'm going to bring it back to something that I know Jacoby loves and everything. All four of us, and Nick here was here earlier today, woke up. We woke up, and some people would say that literally was a miracle, and it, depending on how long you lived, that's a miracle that it happens every day and everything. And I had the pleasure of talking to the gentleman that wrote about the 1924 Washington Senators, and we know that when a team does well, they call that a miracle season, and all along those lines, because they haven't won. I think the Nationals won maybe 5 years, but before that, they hadn't won in years. The same with was it the Red Sox that hadn't won until recently, and if I'm remembering correctly, Jacoby, you're more into the baseball than I am, but I think it was the Red Sox, if I'm remembering correctly, because they that whole curse around Babe Ruth and everything, but we call that a miracle season. So miracle is one of those terms that is oftentimes used to explain something, but sometimes it might even be misused, and a lot of times it's used almost as a kind of a metaphor and things along those lines. But I just wanted your take.
The 1969 Miracle Mets. The Mets have always been a terrible team. They won the World Series in 1969. A miracle.
Like you had the miracle on ice. You had a miracle is just a generic term to describe an event that just is rare or that you feel is rare, and you cannot. And to say that you can study and we did the studies on a quote unquote miracle. Well, okay, so the miracle on ice is the same miracle of birth as you can do a study on births. You can do a study on the miracle on ice and statistics around them winning that championship or that game. It's not. You cannot say that miracles are proven based on studies, because it doesn't make any sense, because you're saying, hey, you know, that pretty wall is proven because it's pretty, and we're proving the word pretty. You're just proving an adjective.
Well, I want to come back to something Chris said earlier, and I'd love to hear his thoughts around this. So if I heard you use the dinosaur metaphor earlier and everything, and I got what you're saying. We don't know whether the meat eaters were actually meat eaters. Maybe some of them were actually vegans for all we know, or they might have been even vegetarians or all of those lines. But the majority of them were probably meat eaters based on the research that we've seen. So I was just wondering, because even here in North Carolina, we have a Museum of Life and Science and a museum of a number of other historical kind of museums, and they will have an image of what is perceived to be what the dinosaur looked like based on fossils and all along those lines. So it is your thought that might not be actually what the Tyrannosaurus Rex or some of the other dinosaurs look like based, or are you actually thinking that the science and the imagery that they have based on the fossils could be realistic, and that might be accurate.
What dinosaurs looks like changes every decade or more. Like dinosaurs used to be uniformly presented as green because lizards are usually green. We thought they were lizards, so green. Then more research came along and they found them with feathers in Jurassic Park, and now you see dinosaurs all sorts of crazy colors. And
here's a book. It's not my book. Here's a book I want you to read. It was done in the 1960s. It's a really, really good book. It's a very quick read. It's called The Weans, Weans. That's what the name of the book is. You can get it on Amazon. You can buy it. It's 70 years old, whatever, 64 years old, right? And this book is a fictional book about how these archaeologists from, of all places, Kenya, which is Africa, is the only continent that is existing in this world, like 7,000 years in the future, and they do digs in a place that they call the Wee. Why did they call it the Wee? Is because when they brought up architectural artifacts, they found that all the artifacts had US on them. So if the country must have been us, and the people that lived in it must have been the Weans, because we is Weans. And it goes on and on and on and on. And that's only 7,000 years. And the more you read it, the more you have to laugh at how you go back and you sit back and you say, now, how do we just say that you cannot say with any semblance of intellectual quality that the dinosaurs could not speak? You sat there and said, oh, their trachea was too small, or they didn't have a trachea, or the blah, 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 blah. Doesn't make any difference. You don't know what they had inside their throat because you don't know what they had inside their throat. All you got is bones. So you sit back.
There's 97% consensus among scientists on climate change, probably higher than that. And the 3%, the oil companies, it's been proven, knew about the possibility of climate change 50 years ago. And over the past 50 years, they've been paying their pet scientists to generate dissent, and so that we don't have, to make people feel like it's an unresolved deal, so the oil companies can continue to do business longer. And if we wait for exact certainty about climate change, then we're probably waiting too long.
Give me an indication of climate change, Rick. Rick, what is one indication of climate change? Just give me one. What's one? Temperature?
Sure, temperature. If you look at the
world temperature, world global temperatures.
No, let me talk about city temperature, because we in a lot of cities we have fairly decent temperature statistics over the past 150 years, and if you look at the temperatures in cities, a lot of cities the temperature's gone up 4 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 30, 50 years. And you can say, well, is that climate change, or is it because there are a lot of roofs and pavement that absorb more heat?
Sure.
But the increase of temperature in cities is real and provable.
It's provable because it was measured in a certain way. So you have to make sure that measurement is either from ground level or from wherever the level is, like you said. And I'm not disagreeing with the more people there are, the more that the climate changes. But I'm telling you also that you need to check out global temperatures, because the global temperatures, I can show you a graph of global temperatures if I still have it. It's straight line. The global temperatures is straight line. I can show it to you. I can show you the graph. I hope I still have it. If I still have it, I'll show it to you, because the temperatures globally are straight line. It's very, 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 very rarely changed.
No, it's not. I've got it right here from NASA. And
yes, go ahead. And what is it to zero? Does the graph show on the left-hand side to zero? Does it show to zero, or does it show to 50 or 40 or 30 or 20?
Hold on. Let me share the screen.
And if it gets warmer, who cares?
Well, the bottom line is that when you actually put it on a standard, it's almost straight line. It's almost straight line across. There's not much of a change. The average global temperature. Okay,
Wait,
Jacoby,
wait.
you and I can talk about this all day long.
Global
So
temperature.
It's
No,
right
no,
there,
global
Chris.
temperature.
It's not.
No,
Okay,
no. This is not global. That's not global temperature.
It literally
This is
says
the global
temperature, Chris.
I'm telling you, just look at the
Chris,
graph.
wait, Chris.
Jacoby, look
Chris,
at the graph.
Stop. It says global temperature, and it is not flat.
No, it doesn't say it. It says look at below it. Latest annual average
Literally, it says
anomaly.
global
No,
temperature, latest
Jacoby, I'm not going to let you get away with this. Latest annual average anomaly. It is not the temperature.
Chris, stop,
You're telling me the
stop,
temperature is
Chris,
1.17
stop,
degrees centigrade?
stop.
Come on.
Chris, read the bold letters. Read the bold letters. to
No.
me. What is the bold? What is that?
Global.
The two bold words at the
Latest
top.
annual average anomaly. It's 1.17 degrees centigrade. Are you telling me that it's 2 degrees Fahrenheit
It
average
says
temperature?
global temperature.
Jacoby,
Chris,
look
stop.
at the data.
Stop.
Look at it.
This is why we get to the
No,
problem.
no.
It
You're
literally
way off
says-
here,
you
bud.
said global
This
temperature
is
wasn't
what.
rising. This says global temperature.
No. You're saying the latest annual average anomaly is 2 degrees Fahrenheit.
It says
No.
key takeaway: the 10 most recent years are the
No,
warmest
no,
years on record.
Jacoby, if you're
Dear
taking up
Lord,
data
Chris,
analytics, just
Again,
get
you
something
said
else.
global temperature
Keep
was
doing what
flat.
you're doing, but don't try to be a data analyst. 'cause you're not even
you
close.
Said global temperature was flat. This says
Yes, it
global
is.
temperature is not flat.
No,
You cannot
you're keep
wait,
Rick. Please tell
show
him
me
he keeps
flat.
repeating the same
Show me flat.
fallacious
I'm not
response.
sure what.
Please.
What are you saying, Chris? That the average temperature, according to our best data, which is admittedly incomplete because we don't have a million years of data, but that according to our best estimates has increased over 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 50 years. Aren't we saying that?
I'm saying that if you take all the data, if you take
Chris,
not
I shared my data.
1.17,
You bring
not
up data.
2.11 degrees Fahrenheit, but the average global temperature, you're going to find that it is almost straight lined all the way across. It's 59. I think it's 59.4 degrees. I think now it's like 60 degrees. So we're talking about a very, very small over the period of time. It's straight lined.
Over what time period are you talking?
I think I went back. Again.
Because, I mean, depending on what time period you pick. Because
Let me see if I got this. If I got this,
Okay.
the world.
if I got this,
Please show your
Boys.
data because
yeah, I will.
I mean,
Hold on, let me see.
please show your data because right now
If
I've
you go
showed
back-
the data
if you-
from
if you
NASA
go- if you
scientists, and
use
you're saying that they're
ice-
wrong.
If you use ice core, I mean, if you go back 4 billion years, the temperature of the Earth was like hot enough to melt rock because it was, we hadn't formed an atmosphere yet. We were barely a planet. If you go back 2,000 years or 3,000 years, I don't know what happens because the planet went through various ice ages. And like when Krakatoa erupted 100 years ago, it cooled the Earth for a year or two because it filled the atmosphere with soot. So I don't know what you're saying here.
I'm saying that the overall average temperature here, if you take into consideration what's going on, that you're going to end up with a very small, very, very, very,
I see exactly what you're doing here, Chris. You don't like the data that all the other scientists have put out there. Now you're taking and actually trying to grab some extra statistics, throw in some extra data to say that it's
no
flat.
extra data. No. That's manipulating data. I'm not manipulating data.
Compared to the long-term average from 1951 to the 1980s. Earth's average surface temperature in 2023 was the warmest on record since record keeping began in 1880.
Well,
so let me talk about this. So here's
we have a problem with our record keeping right now is that we're out of time. So we'll have to continue the
shoot. Well, I got it. Anyways, this is the data, but
wait, this is great data. Let me see if we can add it. Ooh,
so here's your average global temperature, right? And you sit there and say, "Oh my God, Chris, it's rising. It's right. Look at this. This is one degree. But look at it. But look at the average. If you take a look at the average and you do a single line regression, it's going to show that it is straight line. It's straight line because look where it is down here, minus 0.5. Look at what it is up here. just barely at the one level. So if you take over consideration of all this, it's going to be straight line. No, you can't. No, it's not. You can see it's not rising. No, it's not rising. Look at it right here. It's not rising. Look at this. It's not rising, Jacoby. It is not.
Is one above zero.